Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this kickoff to such a major event, and thank you to our hosts, Adobe, for I think what is going to be a milestone event for the progress of structure in our community. My name is Noz Urbina, and I'll be taking you through technical communication is marketing communication, how structure is connecting the dots, to kick off this Adobe DITA World 2016. A little bit about myself as I get started. I am a content strategist and content modeler. Some of you may have heard of me already. I've been in this industry for about 16 years now. And it's been an interesting journey, which is going to be reflected, I think, in this talk. I am a consultant and trainer. I summed up the first 15 years of my career in a book you may have heard of, Content Strategy, Connecting the Dots Between Business, Brand, and Benefits, with my co-author Rahel Bailey, who will be speaking in a couple of hours. And I'm also a guest lecturer at the University of Graz in Austria. I remote lecture from my home base in Europe. And my background has been in large, heavy, and high-tech projects. So organizations that have a large amount of content, many audiences, many outputs, many formats to deliver to, and possibly regulation, security concerns, and so on. Basically, anywhere where we have scale and complexity, that's where I come from. And I think that's part of why I'm here today to kick off Adobe World Day 2016, because I have a diverse background. I've been working on marketing teams, with marketing teams, but also deep in technical documentation, working in very complex environments with brain scanners and microchips and so on. So all of that has kind of brought me to where I am today, which I would like to tell you a little bit about. Obligatory logo slide, just a couple names that I've worked with. I want to talk even beyond my past and I like to start really from a historical perspective, because I think we are at a culturally significant point in our transition in terms of how we communicate. And I really like to pull out examples like this because it gives us food for thought for how we reflect on our situation today. My example today is we had writing, the ability to write, for 2,200 years. That's 200 years longer than we've been counting on our calendar today, before we had alphabetical order. So what that means is we could write down words, but alphabetical order in the sense of ordering words according to the sequence of letters in the alphabet came 2,200 years later. I'll give you an example. The first English dictionary, the Table Alphabéticale by Cowdrey in 1604, had a whole page explaining what alphabetical order was and how it was relevant to looking things up. So it took us 2,200 years to even bother thinking of a system of alphabetizing, and even centuries and centuries after that, the general person, even though they may know how to read and write, still didn't understand alphabetical order and looking things up according to a system that was categorized alphabetically. So when we published the first dictionary, they needed some documentation on this idea of how to look something up by alphabetical order. The reason we never had alphabetical order previously is because we didn't have enough content to care. When humans hit a scale wall, we invent or adopt new standards and management strategies to get us beyond the new challenges. So the relevance to our situation today is we have had structured content for, depending on whose history you're going by, 10, 20, 30, 40, even up to 50 years, which evolving up to where we are today. So we've had structured information. We've been thinking about this stuff called structured content for decades and decades and decades. But that doesn't mean that it hit mass market. It doesn't mean that the time of structure has arrived. I think the time of structure is still arriving. And I think this is a significant point. So if you were someone who was reading and writing in the 12th century or 13th century or 14th century, you maybe have a couple of books or would have written a few letters, The idea of having so much content that you had to sort it by a certain order so that you could look it up in some sort of catalog system is just not something that entered the life of the common literate person, even the common literate person. So just as today, we have people managing large amounts of content in their offices, in their lives, in their careers. But the advanced strategies that we'll be talking about today and that you'll be hearing about for the next 2 days, they haven't hit mass market. They've been in their particular area. So I'm going to talk about why these strategies are being adopted on a wider scale, and specifically the two main communication arms of the business, technical communications and marketing communications, how and why they're coming together. So I'm going to start with the marketing perspective, because that's these days where I'm working most, actually, is on with marketing departments that want to be on the cutting edge and are structuring their information so that they can do with more advanced things. My last words on this little historical bit is the concept of spelling, as we know it today, only came to popular use because of content and scale. It was a solution to a problem that previously didn't exist. So without the scale of information, we don't have to adopt these new strategies. And what I'm finding when I go into a marketing department today is they're only seeing the problem because they've hit a scale wall again today. Previously, they could not perceive that that problem existed. So today's transition is a new scale problem. The internet is everywhere. I love this photo. This is from a photo that we took at a conference that we were organizing, and it's got this sign: toilets, internet, and shoe cleaning. The internet is, in the industrialized world, now becoming ubiquitous to a point where it is going away like electricity. When the infrastructure was being put in place originally, the electrical grid of a city was a big deal. People were very excited about electric lights and having electric devices in their homes. As we progress with the internet, as the infrastructure beds in, it's becoming a non-thing. You've heard the term Internet of Things. We're getting to a point where it's not a question of whether something is internet connected, it's simply how it's internet connected. And the fact to be internet enabled is no longer a big deal. And we have masses and masses and masses amounts of data to deal with. It's content overload is a part of everyday life. So every person in every field of life is dealing with an amount of content that they've never had to in the past. I was watching a documentary recently on farming, and I was talking about the data and digital literacy required of your average farmer today versus 40 years ago. You have to have inventory management systems, software applications, supplier management, and so on and so on and so on, whereas farming in the 50s was a totally different world. And of course, we're aware that the barrage of channels and devices and ways we can consume content, connect with content, distribute content, just keeps coming and coming and coming. Some of you will have heard the announcement just in the past couple days that Google Tango, the Google Augmented Reality smartphone system, has finally been launched. So just as we were getting to grips with virtual reality as maybe a thing, Google is now launching the Augmented Reality platform, which they hope to be the basis of the future. Specifically for marketing, this has direct implications of this technification and electrification of content and life. So this is Harvard Business Review talking about the rise of the chief marketing technologist. The idea that we actually have to have in our corporate structure roles for this crossover management person who knows marketing and knows marketing technology in equal measure. Some of you also may have seen a statistic that's been circulating around for the past couple of years that very recently we had a transition where chief marketing officers now spend more per year on technology than chief information officers. So marketing is becoming a more technical discipline. This is an example from Joe Polizzi, who is the founder of the Content Marketing Institute. And he says, what if I could take a piece of content and publish it to multiple output channels, all set to display in different ways because of the rules that I set without having to handcraft each piece of content separately. Technical communicators have been doing this for years. This is a great one because it's talking about this acceleration, multiple output channels, having to set in this rule-based display based on rules that I set, and moving away from handcrafting, and then the recognition that this is coming from technical communication. There's big interest in the marketing field in what technical communications has been doing and how it has worked. Here's one from the Battle of the Body Field by Jeff Eaton. This is if you are a marketer or if you're a technical communicator who wants to understand more of the marketing and general web perspective on structured information, Jeff is a great person to follow. He also gives us a quote: in the early 90s, every page was a handcrafted labor of love. Sadly, anyone who managed a large site eventually hit the wall, writing piles of custom HTML that tangled valuable content with boilerplate markup, gnarly design tweaks, and other difficult to maintain cruft. This, if you are in the technical communications world and you've already made a transition to DITA, should sound quite familiar. If you're a marketer, you may be finding that this is familiar to your current situation. The word handcrafted has come up twice, and we keep coming back to this idea of we're hitting a wall. Google is one of my favorite examples of an organization which is kind of smoothly and gently behind the scenes, as they do, slipping the concepts of structured data and structured content into the general web and into the wider market. There's something called the Structured Data Markup Helper. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but the idea is that today Google will help you add some sort of structured markup to tell Google specifically what types of information you have on your pages. This is just some basic examples where you can do things like articles, films, restaurant software applications, but this is actually based on something called schema.org, which is an international standard for how you mark up things in the world: products, services, schedules, offerings, promotions, rankings, ratings, and on and on and on. And this language is growing and growing. So it's an idea of having more meaningful markup and telling computers not that you're publishing a web page or a PDF, but specifically what the meaning of that content is. Google is encouraging us to do this, despite the fact that it is the leader in artificial intelligence and algorithms that interpret content. This is Google saying, our algorithm is not going to be smart enough on its own. We need you to structure your content and tell us what you're talking about. Today in marketing, we're also seeing a transition where marketing is becoming a support function. This is, I think, very interesting for both marketers and technical communicators to find common ground. This is a quote that I use in a lot of my presentations about content marketing. The idea of content marketing is summed up here in 2 sentences. Overt selling has given way to problem solving. Sweeping statements have given way to conversation-like messages. That's from Robert Rose, the other co-founder of the Content Marketing Institute. What I really like about this is it shows this meeting of the minds. Marketing has realized publishing out commercial and endorsement-based promotion messages and commercial calls to action isn't working in the same way it used to. We're all getting better and better at avoiding ads. We're all more and more tired of the thousands of commercial messages that we receive every single day. So we're using ad blockers and digital TV recorders and streaming services and anything we can do to avoid any kind of commercial content. So marketing is getting pushed into a tinier and tinier corner. So smart marketers have invented content marketing because they had to, because they realized people weren't paying attention and they have to move to a problem-solving base. We have to find out what customers are trying to do, what their objectives are, and see how we can insinuate our brand and our business into those conversations. Technical communicators have been about enabling customers to achieve their objectives since their inception. So whereas marketing was all about persuasion and is now moving to enablement, technical communication has been all about enablement and is now learning about how they can play a role in persuasion, which I'm going to get to later in my presentation. The other sentence in here, which I can unpack, is sweeping statements have given way to conversation-like messages. So we're moving again away from a publishing mentality where we're putting out brochures or manuals or the application help or the app or whatever it is, and we're moving to a personalization base where we can really have a conversation with our users, pre-sale, post-sale, during the sale, which is all about them and what they want to do specifically. This is from Christina Halverson, quoting Jerry McGovern. And if you're in the general web or web content strategy or marketing content strategy worlds, you may know those two names, both quite recognized names in the field. And the quote from Jerry McGovern's book, "The future of marketing is about looking after current customers." So marketers are realizing that in a hyper-competitive globalized world, we have to support customers with great experiences even after the sale and maintain those relationships and defend those relationships from competitors if you want to be successful. And I'm rounding out this section with a phrase from my own bank. I use the term content karma. The idea of content karma is the more real value you give to customers, the more that will come back your way. So really, this is an ethos that technical communicators and marketing communicators can both get behind. We want to deliver value to customers, give them a great experience, and deepen our relationships with them. One of the ways that we have to do that, and the ways that we can do that, is thinking omnichannel. I talked a little bit about my background and how I've been working in major enterprises, and I believe I mentioned that I have a background in heavy technical communications. That's where I was kind of born, in the structured technical communications world. My current work is more with marketing departments doing structured marketing and bringing in technical communications into the marketing communications world. One of the reasons that my kind of work has kind of exploded in the past 5 years was with the smartphone. When the iPhone came out, what seems like way back when, suddenly everybody realized we went from print to the internet, and now we have to go from the internet to the internet and apps on the phone. So we went from having 1 channel to 2 channels to 4 channels. And people kind of realized this isn't going to stop. And now we have things like Samsung at their launch event for the S7 handsets talking all about the virtual reality as the next platform coming. And I mentioned earlier that just 2 days before this presentation, Google has released their announcement about Google Tango for augmented reality. So we're realizing that the channels are not going to stop coming. There are still some communicators out there saying things like you can survive with a mobile-only paradigm, which I think is a little bit short-sighted, because if you're thinking mobile-only, you're not thinking touch screens in a work environment. You're not thinking massive devices. You're not thinking touch surfaces on a table, augmented reality, and so on and so on. There is no one only philosophy or approach you can adopt that will last you in the future. So in front of mobile first, mobile only, or augmented reality first, or augmented reality only, you have to think content first and be more smart about how you deliver to all of your various channels. The future of delivery is going to be multi-channel, but it's also going to be simply smarter. This is an example I also use a lot. This is a query that I put into Google a little while ago when I was in a city called Sutton in the United Kingdom, and I was looking for a supermarket called Asda. And until a few years ago, I would have gotten a series of web pages as results, because Google was all about delivering you the right web page. Now I get this, and that is not a page, it's an answer. It's an answer to my question, which is what I actually wanted. So this is, for me, an example of content karma, because Asda, as a supermarket, has given me some value, and I haven't even loaded up a single page. I haven't seen the promotions that they're offering. I haven't seen the logo that they've got. I haven't seen all the pretty branding. So they've just given out value, asking nothing particularly in return, because that's good for our customer relationship. And if I've got two supermarkets, one who's telling me like this, their hours, and another that's making me click on a link, wait till it loads, find their schedule, read down to the day I'm on, and so on, I'm going to be much more positive about this one who just gave me the answer. All modern content solutions are moving in this direction. We're moving away from a passive website or a passive document repository to an active system that delivers the right dose of information to the right person. And it does that by leveraging metadata. Metadata being one of the things that enables and is the basis of structured information. So all of these trends are leading the communication arms of business to the same conclusion. Adaptive content. The more we can make our content adaptive, the more we can realistically deliver tailored, high-value content without running out of budget, resources, or time. Our content cannot be handcrafted. We cannot be making static documents. We have to be making content that is ready to adapt to different devices, different audiences, different platforms. And that content is what we manage. That's our business asset that we invest in, and we want to get more return on investment from over time. TechCom realized that a while ago, and now marketing is coming to the same conclusion. Our content itself needs to be smarter, not how we process it, not the algorithms. They need to be smarter too, but also we need to just be making content itself that is ready, that is intelligent, that is ready to adapt. DITA, the topic that we're going to be hearing about for the next 2 days, is a proven standard for creating adaptive content. It's all about creating content that's ready for multiple devices, multiple audiences, and multiple ways of being expressed out. So once upon a time, technical communicators were badly overloaded and badly underfunded. We had more and more jobs to do, and we were handcrafting, copying and pasting, and struggling. So we realized we needed to work smarter, not harder. So what that means specifically is we have to get machines to help us scale. To get machines to help us scale, we have to use more semantic structures that computers can make sense of. So I showed you earlier the Google Structured Data Markup Helper. That's going from marking things up as being headings and paragraphs, page titles and tables, to being an article or a how-to or a schedule or a promotion or a ranking. We're telling the computer more meaningful, which is what semantic means. We're telling it more meaningful information about our content. So we're adding semantic structures in the form of metadata that allows a computer to understand what we're trying to communicate. That's what DITA is about, and that's what all of the main hot themes in the web world are about. These two are connected by this idea of structure and meaningful metadata. We have to industrialize ad hoc and manual processes. We have to automate. So we have to move from a cottage industry where we are working in small teams who are working in silos with unstructured tools, copy and paste, to systems where large teams can collaborate on shared structures and they can automate the results into a common platform. We have to make teams agree on single points of truth and share updates. We have to not confuse, frustrate, or endanger our users. So what that means is we have to chop documents up and then build them back together. So DITA, as many of you will know, is based on the idea of component content. We take content from being big monolithic blocks like documents or large web pages, and we chop them up into DITA topics. The DITA topic being a component which allows us to then rebuild our content back together when we need to. So we can have a single point of truth and we can share updates. We also realized we needed to deliver people what they want when they want it, and not everything we have. So in technical communications, one of the most common struggles I would have was that we would have a huge repository of manuals, of help files, of stuff, app notes, how-tos, videos, on and on and on, and we just gave them everything. So everybody who wanted to do anything with the product had this enormous encyclopedia of everything that the product could do, would do, had in it, and so on and so on. DITA encourages user orientation, task orientation, and focusing on delivering certain types of users the right information conditionally for their needs. So to do this, we have to separate the manageable content asset from the end user deliverable. So we have to realize this isn't about making a manual or making a help file. And on the marketing side, it's not about making a brochure, and it's not about making a website. It's about making useful, manageable content. If we invest in that, then we can filter and reconfigure content components to deliver the right stuff at the right time. We have to have more metadata, and we have to be more effective at managing that metadata. So the role of a system becomes greater in the DITA environment and in the modern structured environment in general. We have to have a lot more metadata describing our content so that we can do this automation of the personalization process. We also realized we needed to stop delivering to just one format of channel and not stay in the world of print and page-based paradigms. So we had to create with the consistency that machines need and people like, and we had to use structured information so we can do many formats and many channels. So I used the word omnichannel recently, a few slides ago, and omnichannel is kind of a new word. We used to say multi-channel, and actually many people still say multi-channel. The difference between those two is we can do multi-channel in a very basic and simplistic way. And in tech comms, that's what we were doing with DITA a lot of the time. We're taking our manual, which could be in PDF, and then we're saving it out as HTML. So now you can view it as HTML on a web page, and you can view it as a PDF, but it's the exact same content. To do that, you have to have consistency, because the system has to understand how things are marked up in the PDF version and the web version so that it can save out the two versions effectively and consistently. But if we're doing omnichannel, we're combining the two ideas from the two rows of this table together. We're not just saving out the same thing in two formats, we're saving out the appropriate information for that user in the situation that they're in. So we're moving away from having one set of product descriptions, one set of web pages, one set of PDFs, to having a bank of information where different people can get out the right information for them. And finally, we're adding, in all of this, rigor to content. We are basically, sorry, I've just been told there might be a little bit of technical difficulty here. I'm just going to pop out for 1 second to check. Sorry. Okay. Stefan, are you getting me okay with the slides and everything?
Sorry, I can see your slides and
so it's working fine.
I can hear you.
Great. Okay, yeah, we'll continue then. Sorry about that. Okay, all of this, I sum up with this moving from the workshop to the assembly line metaphor. What communications teams, both in marketing and technical communications today, want to do is manage their content like a business asset, separate it from format, but do that in a scalable and efficient process. So you think about what an assembly line is. It's taking several stations where one engineer or one mechanic works on their car and fixes it, and separating out the work into different specialisms and creating one big system that many people are participating in. Moving from an ordinary mechanic shop floor to an assembly line is a big investment. It's a big thing that you have to justify. It needs a lot of organization. everyone has to buy in, people need retraining. It's a big thing. But once you put in that more industrialized process, the output increase that you get is exponential. You're not just getting twice as many cars out the door, you're getting 10 times as many or more, 100 times as many. So that's what's happening in content. We are dividing up the work of creating a piece of content from being several handcrafted individual jobs to larger systems where we have different specialisms, each doing their bit in a connected system that has been properly designed. And that is something that all kinds of communicators want to do. And now, more and more, the marketing and the technical communicators want to do that together in a single system, in a single way of working. One of the big drivers here that you can get, and one of the big benefits I want to come back to, is personalization. 74% of online consumers get frustrated with that lack of relevance in content. 38% of consumers will actively set preferences to support personalized content. They will go out of their way to tell you who they are and what their interests are so that they can get personalized content. However, 66% of marketers struggle with securing internal resource. And 66% of marketers struggle to personalize in real time, yet 77% believe it's crucial. So the top two tell you the market really wants personalized content. They don't want to sort through manuals, lots of irrelevant content, websites with lots of irrelevant promotions, product information with lots of irrelevant stuff that's not for them, for their particular interests. But the statistics I have here on personalization are specifically for marketing. We can't get the resource because it's too expensive in the way we work today. To personalize just costs too much because of the way we're doing it. We haven't put the assembly line in yet. I'm going to give you an example of how the concepts of DITA are being used outside of TechCom. This is a very popular example when I'm working with marketing teams, because it's an example where we're taking an old deliverable and we're reinventing it and seeing how it can work in the new paradigm. So what we have here are two topics. These are coming from a white paper. This is an actual white paper project that I did where we did it in DITA, and we have the concepts that are discussed in the white paper. The white paper was about omnichannel, so we talk about what is omnichannel, what are the business challenges, and so on. And those become sections of a white paper. However, because it is structured information, we've got subsections, sub-blocks within those DITA topic blocks. And those allow us to automatically generate, for example, a blog post. We can pull out titles and short descriptions from our concepts and images, and we can generate an electronic blog post with a new topic at the top and the tail. We can also take those same pieces of content out and generate a leaflet, which gives you the teaser information, which also was shown on the blog, and now it's being rendered for print. So you've got different calls to action, you've got some different introduction stuff because it's a print deliverable, but you've generated that with much less work. Each individual case study can also be topped and tailed, and then each case study within the white paper can be its own blog. All of these, of course, are pointing back to the main hub page on the website, which is telling you about the white paper, which is the main piece driving this whole campaign. And then all the videos are also individually reusable items, which are shareable with subtitles for non-audio viewing and so on and so on. And then you can multiply this by as many industries as you want. Because we're working in DITA, we can have sections that are for the consumer packaged goods industry, for retail, for banking, for mechanical engineering, and so on and so on. The concepts and the principles and recommendations are reusable, and then we just swap out different case studies depending on what industry we're talking to. So all the principles of how you would handle a complex manual where you wanted to have a main manual, but you also wanted a quick start guide, and you also wanted a how-to, and you also wanted it for senior engineers versus junior engineers, everything that we would see in a DITA environment, we can translate those concepts perfectly to the marketing environment. I've been working with a pharma company, and they were making multi-page medical letters. So this is an interesting department because it's sitting right between TechCom and Marcom, because it's a form of technical communication, because there are these large documents that are very technical in nature for healthcare professionals. And what a medical letter is, it can be a summary of a study, it can be news about what's happening with a drug or a new trial, it can be information and reference information about a product. So it's very valuable stuff, but it also drives sales decisions, because a healthcare professional needs to make a decision. Should I prescribe this drug or that drug? And if they make a prescription, then that is a sale for that company. So it's really sitting on the boundary line between technical communication and marketing communication. And these authors that I'm working with, they don't quite consider themselves to be either. They consider themselves to be the medical information team. But they're moving to a base now where they can work with DITA, because they were doing these manual rewrites of the medical letters into FAQs. So a medical letter might be 12 pages, but an FAQ, they want it to be 1 page. So they broke the content up, and we restructured it with DITA so that we had something called a quick answer, which is really a title and a short description. So that's almost Twitter length. That's the question being asked, and just 50 words on what the answer is. The rest of the topic is what they call an FAQ. It's about a page long, so it's the title, short description, and then a few paragraphs and maybe an image which answers that same question. And then medical letters are everything together in one deliverable. So we have 3 stages of information planned out in our DITA components. But what that allows them to do is generate 1 medical letter, and then generate maybe 3 or 4 or 10 FAQs from that medical letter, and then also the equivalent short answers. So how this is interesting for both marketers and technical communicators is that you can imagine where the same user may not always want the same depth of information at the same time. So when they want a quick answer, they literally have a patient in front of them. They want to Google something up. Is this the product for me? And then have a direct answer right there. In the overview, they may be putting a research assistant on it, or they may be doing it when they have a free hour, and they put together several overviews and they read them all. And then the medical letter, that's when it's the same topic again, the same subject, but they want to download a whole medical letter, print it off, take it home, read it on the train, et cetera, et cetera. So not only have we componentized based on our reuse, we've componentized and thought about client situations and personalization so that we're enabling them in their work, and that drives more sales. We're using our reference information as an enabler, which builds a better relationship and drives sales. So this is a really good crossover point between TechCom thinking, Marcom thinking, and DITA. I've got another example from a banking company. Well, it's a major bank. It's probably was a top 5 bank. These days, I think it's a top 10 bank in the world. But they had handcrafted web pages, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of handcrafted web pages, thousands and thousands of internal procedures, policies, and reference documents. They had inconsistent product descriptions, and they had procedures and policies and reference information buried in their internal intranet in FAQs and in handcrafted pages. So we're moving them to a modular and modeled environment. So DITA and DITA-like structures for everything. So we can describe products in a consistent way, and then we can apply formatting globally. And colleagues who are looking at processes, procedures, concepts, tasks, they can have the in-branch information, which is different than the call center information. They can have the self-serve information, which clients look at directly on the website, which is different from both of the internal types of information. So from the same source, we're enabling our colleagues, we're enabling our clients, and we're better describing all of our information and presenting it more consistently. So we're bringing together TechCom and MarCom, and we're bringing together the values of customer-centric information. So adaptive content with DITA, from my perspective, to sum it up, if you are a marketer or if you're a technical communicator who wants to talk to your colleagues about DITA and the potential in the wider industry, it's about minimum effort and minimum inventory. So we want to put the least amount of manual work into our content, and we want to manage less things. We don't want to manage every single deliverable. We want to manage the content, which then allows us to generate deliverables. So minimum effort and minimum inventory for maximum customer delight. So how can we, as organizations, come together, use structure and use DITA so we can delight customers with a minimum of work and the minimum assets in a repository? If we do that, we've seen from technical communications and we've seen from marketing communications when they've adopted structured information that we can see 30 to 50% efficiency increases. What those kind of efficiency increases tell you is that you're more scalable. You can do twice as much work in the same amount of time. And I think those estimates in some cases are still quite conservative, but I get scared when I'm talking about 60 or 70% because people don't believe me. But quite honestly, I've seen teams who are spending hours and hours and hours copying and pasting, chasing updates, getting approvals and sign-offs, and that's on both sides of the divide, marketing communicators and technical communicators. You both have to get reviews done, you both have to do multiple formats, you both have to adapt for multiple audiences, for multiple deliverables. It takes thousands and thousands of man-hours for a team to pull that off every year. So we can get enormous efficiency increases by adopting DITA. We get improved management. So our voice, which is very important for marketers, how we present ourselves, and also the messages, which is important for everybody, because if you, regardless of what kind of communicator you want your message to arrive accurately at the destination. So any kind of corruption or lack of updates because you haven't, updated that particular deliverable is bad. On the TechCom side, we've seen figures go out of date, processes have changed and not gotten updated in all the task descriptions, and then on the same thing on the marketing side. I have heard stories about a company where you could go on the website. This is I say stories, it's from a direct colleague of mine with his client. He had a client where you could go on the website and you'd see one page, but if you went on them with your cell phone, you'd see an offer for a discount that the website on the desktop was no longer showing because they weren't single sourcing the content. So you could you click through for an offer and buy for a discount if you go through your phone, but you see a different thing on the desktop web. So same exact problems as you'd have in TechCom that have to be addressed. Visual branding. I've had every kind of team tell me, we've got all these old deliverables in the old template, and we just can't afford to spend the time to bring them up to date. And then all this rolls up into user experience. If you're able to manage your voice, manage your messages, manage your branding, and manage your content more effectively, you can get a better user experience. That gives you improved ability to deliver great experiences consistently. And I want to put a little word in, if I have anybody, any taxonomists or ontologists or people in governance on the line. Some of the implications behind all this is an increase in importance in those two fields, taxonomy and governance. I'm going to talk a little bit more about them later, but definitely a footnote there. And what all this is doing is unlocking the full potential of content. So no matter what kind of communicator you are, that's what I want you to take into the next couple of days. What this is about is unlocking the potential of your content. Right now, it's locked up in proprietary formats, it's locked up in multiple deliverables, and in processes which don't work together across the enterprise. We're getting less ROI from this high content investment. What DITA can do for us is unlock that potential and allow us to deliver it out to customers so that it comes back through some content karma and gives us the value in that relationship. So how are we connecting the dots? This image of connecting the dots across deliverables and time is something that most major brands are getting excited about. So you may not realize it, but there's probably other executives and other managers in your organization right now who are thinking, how can we connect the dots? There's an expression called the red thread, which comes from Theseus and the Minotaur. If you've heard the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur is a monster living inside the labyrinth. And so he's in a big maze, and Theseus is the hero who has to go in and kill the monster. But if you're killing a monster in a maze, you have to get yourself back out again. So what Theseus does is he unspools a red thread. So the red thread, when you're talking about a red thread, it's the thing that keeps you from getting lost in the forest. It's the thing that you hold on to keep you grounded. And so many companies are not connecting the dots with any kind of red thread. So if we have search and social content, content marketing, marketing content, and deep technical documentation, are we providing our users with a path through our content? So search and social is probably pretty good at going to content marketing. So you might see a tweet, or you might see a Facebook post about a webinar or a white paper, which is content marketing stuff. Then those, do they hand off properly to marketing content? So you don't necessarily want to be too commercial in, let's say, a white paper, which you've given out to help people, or a webinar like this. However, is there any kind of connection, and are you properly guiding people to your products, your product descriptions, your marketing pages, and so on? And from those, are you properly connecting to the real deep documentation, possibly the tech comm stuff, which is going to aid people in researching a purchase? I see this from people buying home electronics to enterprise companies who are buying servers and enterprise software packages and your new enterprise bank. So whether it's business or business to consumer, people are doing more and more research before they engage with any sort of commercial function. So they want to educate online before they talk to sales. They want to know what the post-sales experience is going to be before they start buying. So they want links to that deep technical documentation. So in that way, the tech comm is part of marketing communications, because people are going to see it and they're going to decide, based on this quality of this technical information, am I going to make a purchase? So what that means is you should be circling back from your technical documentation up to some sort of either content marketing or marketing content. And then possibly from there, of course, you want it to be good enough to be shareable and so on. Now, a lot of tech comm people will get a little bit scared if I talk about having any sort of marketing or commercial messaging inside technical content. And a lot of marketers will think that they don't want to put their marketing stuff in with technical communications. But I'll give you, first of all, an example. It's an enterprise software company, very large company who everybody in this call knows. They put commercial messages on their knowledge-based content. So you come on looking for manuals and how-tos and reference information, and they get 6 times more click-throughs from the tech comm than they do from the product marketing pages. Why? Because if you're looking at tech comm, you are either a customer or you're someone who is a very engaged prospect. So it means I'm engaged, I'm building a relationship with you or evaluating my relationship with you, and I am looking for answers. So that's exactly the right time to tell me that you have some other thing which might be of value. So I'm not going to be annoyed at you and think it's just an ad if you properly contextualize a message that is relevant to my problem. So you tell me you've got this other module I can buy, or maybe I should upgrade or something like that. While I'm looking at tech comms, that's not irrelevant. It's not an ad. It's not a banner. It's a relevant message that helps me achieve my objective. So if we connect the dots this way, we can keep people in that conversation with us and prevent them from going back to Google and just looking up our competitors. So connecting the dots and providing a red thread is a way that technical communicators and marketing communicators come together to help customers. And the statistics support this. IBM's Jay Mathewson, he was a reviewer for our book, and in the book we interviewed him for a case study for IBM.com, and he said 60% of prospects used what would usually be called post-sales documentation material as part of their sales cycle. So you're buying business-to-business products, you're definitely going to be looking at that post-sales stuff to decide whether you want to buy. And if you are in business-to-business, your customers are your best prospect base. You want to be facilitating those relationships and building them deeper and upselling and cross-selling. This is also from IBM. This is on the importance of high-quality technical content to the perception of the company. 84.4% of respondents felt that they perceive the company differently based on high-quality technical content. 93% say it's relevant to their satisfaction with the product or solution. Their perception of solution quality, 96%, and initial purchase decision, whether they would buy or not, 88.7%. There's a company called SDL, also makes software products, and their customers, 70% of their customers, say their clients are going online to consume after-sales material to research purchases. And that's not just for companies like IBM, that's for all sorts of companies. Some articles that are coming out, we're seeing things like marketing organizations talking about how call centers will be run by marketing in the future. And the future call center, 10 predictions for the next 10 years, the call center will become a relationship hub. So if you are supplying information from tech comms to the call center to support the field engineers, you're using those people as an indirect channel for content. And what we're seeing is marketing is also getting involved. So if you're a technical communicator, you want to find out what's happening in these call centers. What are the objectives there, and what are the common questions that we're getting? So how can I improve my user orientation based on what's happening in the call center? And if you're in marketing, you're also looking at this as an opportunity to build your relationship with customers after the sale and to make sure that you're defending your brand and increasing your customer loyalty. So I'm in the final stretch here. I want to wrap up. How can technical communicators and marketing communicators open this dialogue? Well, lots of ways. If you haven't already examined structure for your own silos, start there, of course. Find out how can you use tools like DITA, or DITA specifically, to enable all the things that I was talking about earlier. Automation, separation of deliverables from content, and improved customer experience. If you're already structuring your information, how can you work with your colleagues? Rather than trying to get, who's the boss, between TechCom and Marcom, who owns the customer and so on, put the customer at the center. Make them the center of your dialogue. I talk a lot these days about customer journey mapping. If you look up customer journeys, you often get customer life cycles. The way that I break it down is like this. The customer life cycle is this big thing where we talk about prospects, evaluators, purchasers, advocates, and so on, big categories. Within that, there are many journeys. The customer's going on a journey to purchase the product, to install the product, to decommission the product. If you're selling a service and maybe they want to register, maybe they want to transfer their account from another competitor to your service, and so on and so on. So these are all journeys within the life cycle, and there are many moments along the journey, stages in that journey, and some of them require a system use case. Now, the life cycle is how we organize things as a company. It tends to be quite marketing-focused sales life cycle. Use case is a technical perspective of the system. That's how the engineers are thinking. Where we can come together is around the journeys. That's the consumer's perspective. So if we put the customer journey at the center, then we will do the best job if multiple stakeholders from multiple departments come together and say, what is the customer experiencing across all of our silos? So let's say it's an enterprise purchase. You're going from anonymous contact, lead, customer advocate. That's the life cycle. But you have a journey on this, just on this purchase. So you have general researching, supplier evaluation, negotiation, and the signing and sign up process. If you get multiple stakeholders into a room, they can analyze that process. So what content do you have that's relevant at supplier evaluation? What content do I have that's relevant at supplier evaluation? What is happening during general research? And so on. And you break down those processes together and see what content is relevant for the customer's needs, and how can you build a system which works best for the customer's needs. Look at that from the customer perspective, and then look at it again for a new lead, somebody who's not a customer, because it might be different. You might be giving them different promotions, different cuts of the information, but get together and trace that customer journey together, and you can enter into a common dialogue about what the real market requirements are, and therefore what to do with your content. So customer journey mapping sits in the middle. You've got all of your usual content stuff: inventory, audit and analysis, persona development, brand strategy, task matrices, market research, insights, web analytics, and you unify that all into the story about what is the customer doing to accomplish their objective. Just a note there, if you are using personas, which you should be both in TechCom and Marcom, and they should be the same personas because you're talking about the same people, those persona researchers should know that they're going to be researching for omnichannel journey mapping. Otherwise, you're going to come back with website journeys or manual journeys or app journeys. You don't want that. You want omnichannel journeys that map content in a design to what the user is trying to achieve. Then you can design editorial plans, content models, writing guidelines, things called domain maps, taxonomy and information architectures, your UX stuff, and even your development specifications. Because let's say you do want to put cross-sell ads on TechCom, or you do want technical communicators reference tables to show up in an evaluator's guide that marketing's put together. You might need technical people to help you do that. Then once you've got that worked out, you can begin to create and deliver. And once you've created and delivered, then you can measure and optimize so that you're feeding back into your own market intelligence. Your content becomes a way that you improve understanding and improve your understanding of what customers are doing across teams. This is a very, very popular thing right now with my clients. Enterprises are realizing we can't do good customer experience team by team. We have to look at it from the customer's perspective. And we're doing a lot of these workshops lately. So it's a great way for teams to come together and get the customer at the center of the conversation. You can take a look at this in greater detail when you get the slides, but then I have a whole template for how you record all this. So the overall purpose is after this session, after this whole big event you're attending is done, do yourself some journey maps, capture requirements and processes across teams, and map what content does a certain persona need at a certain stage. From that, you can build a taxonomy. I'm not going to define that in too much detail, but basically you're defining your tagging system for categorizing information, for how you're going to speak, so what terminology do you use, and how are things related. And then you can build a content model. So you formalize your content structures, what types of contents you're going to produce, your standards for how they should be written, and guidelines for how authors can reuse content to make new deliverables. And in the DITA world, you're specifically going to make map templates, topic templates, specializations, and writing standards on a per element level. So this particular part of a DITA topic should be written in this way, and so on and so on. All of that comes together and gets formalized in your platform so you can have a unified platform and approach for excellent customer experience. If you can't break down the silos today, at least start a project within your silo that you can bring somebody else into so they can see the value and you can show them the benefit and they will join your unified platform. So what you can do now, do that omnichannel readiness review, audit your current state and see how much work you have to do, build cross-team multi-channel journeys and stories, consider the metrics and KPIs. How are you going to measure this new initiative? How can you prove it's valuable? Break up your deliverables into content assets, so from monolithic to modular, topic-based, and then implement your minimum viable product, so a minimum level conservative project that is the start for a longer-term transformation. These things that I'm talking about won't happen overnight. As I said, we're at a cultural transition with how big the move is from unstructured, non-collaborative work to structured, collaborative, industrialized work. So it is a journey, but you're going to be hearing 2 whole days of excellent experts that are going to tell you how you can get along in your journey and how you can move forward faster and more effectively. Thank you very much. I'm exactly on the hour, so I don't know if, Stefan, we're going to be able to have any time for a couple questions, but I want to thank everyone for attending. I really appreciate your time and your attention, and I hope you have an excellent Adobe World Day 2016.